Hi friends, this is Mara again with another Childhood Hours video. Today, we're going to Iran, and I want to start with a book of poetry by a man named Hafez, a Persian poet who died 700 years ago. And in millions of Iranian homes, his poems are recited from memory, by grandmothers, by parents, and by children, like daily bread. In Iran, poetry is not something you study at school. It is something that lives inside you. In Iran, childhood is shaped by two ancient inheritances, the poetry and an elaborate ritual of politeness that begins almost before a child can speak. Iran is a country of 89 million people, sitting at the crossroads of Asia and the Middle East. It is the heart of what was once Persia, one of the oldest continuous civilizations on Earth. And if Finland trusts the child, Korea trusts the work, Brazil trusts the connection, and Nigeria trusts the village. Iran trusts the word, the spoken word, the written word, the poem, the promise, the exquisitely chosen phrase, ta'aruf. There is no perfect English translation. Imagine you're a guest in an Iranian home. The host offers you food. Custom says you must politely refuse, at least once, maybe twice, before accepting. The host must then insist, and insist again, sometimes 3 or 4 rounds before the food is finally taken. It looks to outsiders like a kind of theater, but to Iranians, it is a conversation about dignity. The host is saying, "You are worthy of my best." The guest is saying, "I would never burden you." And every interaction, from buying bread to negotiating a contract, runs on this elegant choreography. And Iranian children begin learning it before they can read. When a baby is born in Iran, the family assembles. Grandparents, especially the maternal grandmother, Madar Bozorg, are deeply involved from the very first days. In many Iranian households, 2 or 3 generations live under the same roof. A baby is rarely alone, rarely without arms to hold them. The phrase Iranian parents use is barayat mimiram. I would die for you. It is said as casually as I love you, and it is meant. And from the very first sounds a baby hears in Iran, the cadence is poetic. Persian lullabies, lalai, borrow phrases from classical poets the way English lullabies borrow from nursery rhymes. The baby is being sung to in language that has been refined for 1,000 years. Before a child has a single word of their own, they have already heard Rumi. They have already heard Saadi. The poetry enters first. Iranian parents have a word for what they're teaching their children. It's called adab. It means manners, civility, the cultivated self. A child with adab kisses an elder's hand in greeting, says salam before anything else, stands when an older person enters the room, pours tea for guests before pouring their own, never speaks back to a parent, never interrupts. Adab is not about being meek. It is about being someone who has been raised, someone who belongs to the long chain of grace that runs through Persian culture. And then the poetry begins. By age 6 or 7, an Iranian child is expected to memorize verses by Hafez, Rumi, and Saadi. Not for school, for family. There are evenings where everyone takes turns reciting, and the children are part of the rotation. Real verses, real meanings, real applause. There's a famous Iranian practice called fal-e-Hafez. Hafez, fortune-telling. You open his book at random, point to a verse, and read it as guidance for your life. Children watch their parents do this. They learn that poetry is something you turn to when you need an answer. Formal school in Iran begins at age 6. 6 years of elementary, 3 years of middle school, 3 years of high school. The system is centralized, standardized, and academically demanding. Mathematics, sciences, Persian literature, English, Arabic, religious studies. And every single year, poetry. Iranian children memorize hundreds of verses through their school career. Not as an enrichment elective, as a core subject. And everything in the Iranian school system points toward one event, Concours, the National University Entrance Exam taken at age 18. Nearly 1 million students sit for it every year. The results determine which university you attend, and in Iran, where you went to university, determines almost everything. If this sounds familiar, it should. Korea has its Sonyoung, Iran has its concours. Two countries on opposite sides of the world, building entire childhoods around the same ferocious bottleneck. And here's the part that surprises almost everyone. In Iran today, roughly 60% of university students are women. That's not a typo. In medicine, in engineering, in the sciences, Iranian women outnumber men in higher education by a wide margin. In some recent years, over 63% of concours test takers have been female. Iranian girls grow up with a paradox: a society with deep restrictions in some areas, and one of the highest rates of female educational achievement in the world. The Iranian mother saying, "Study, my daughter, study," that is one of the most powerful forces in this culture. Every spring, on the first day of spring, Iranian children stay up to watch the world turn. Nowruz, Persian New Year, a celebration that is 3,000 years old. Families set a half scene, a table of 7 symbolic items, each starting with the Persian letter S. Sprouts, apple, garlic, vinegar, sumac, and more. There's a mirror, a bowl of water, and almost always, a book of Hafez. For 13 days, children visit relatives, receive money called Saadi, and on the final day, families picnic outdoors to release the year's bad luck onto the grass. It is joy on a scale that lasts weeks. And in the dead of winter, on the longest, darkest night of the year, Iranians celebrate Shab-e-Yalda. Families gather, they eat pomegranates and watermelon, symbols of light and life. They tell stories, and they open the book of Hafez. Each person makes a silent wish, opens to a random page, and the verse they find is read aloud as their fortune for the year. Iranian children grow up watching this, and eventually, they are the ones holding the book. The chain continues. So why does poetry hold such weight in Iranian childhood? Why Ta'aruf? Why all this elaborate language? Because Persia has been invaded many times, conquered by Arabs, by Mongols, by Turks. Its borders have shifted, its rulers have changed. But one thing held: the language, the poetry, the shared cultural code that no army could carry away. When Iranian parents teach their child to recite Hafez, they are doing something ancient. They are passing down the one thing that has survived every empire. They are saying, "This is yours. This belongs to you. No one can take it." Iranian parenting is a paradox. The warmth is obvious. Iranian children are kissed, fed, complimented, and indulged. Mothers sacrifice everything for their children. Fathers, even strict ones, melt for their daughters in ways that surprise outsiders. And yet, the standards are high. Achievement matters, education matters. How you behave in public, how you speak to elders, how well you do in school. All of it is watched, discussed, and gently corrected. Iranian children grow up inside love and inside expectation. The two are not in conflict. They are the same thing. Remember Korea? The Hagwons, the Sonyoung, the 10 hours a day of study. Iran is not quite that, but it is closer than people realize. Iranian teenagers preparing for the concours live in a state of sustained pressure that can last for years. Private tutoring is everywhere. Anxiety is high, sleep is short, and the cost is real. Iran, like Korea, has had to confront rising youth depression and burnout. Two countries that have built childhoods around a single test are both quietly asking the same question. Was it worth it? Finland says a child needs freedom. South Korea says a child needs preparation. Brazil says a child needs belonging. Nigeria says a child needs character. Iran says a child needs language. The poem, the proverb, the right phrase at the right moment. The cultural inheritance that no one can take away. 5 countries, 5 completely different answers. And in every single one, millions of children have grown up whole and loved and ready for the world. So what's the thread running through all of this? I think it's this. Iran has built a childhood around the idea that what makes a person whole is what they have been given by those who came before. The verse, the greeting, the careful word, the recipe, the poem your grandmother knew by heart. In a country that has lived through enormous change, the children carry the continuity. The Persian word mehr means love, but not romantic love. It means tenderness, the everyday warmth of family, the kind of love that shows up as a glass of tea quietly placed beside you, as a hand on your shoulder while you study, as a verse of poetry whispered at bedtime. Mehr is also the root of the Persian word mehman, guest. To Iranians, a guest is treated like the embodiment of love itself. That is the soft engine underneath every Iranian childhood. Mehr. Here's something to sit with. Was there a song, a poem, a phrase, or a proverb from your childhood? Something your parents or grandparents repeated that you still carry with you today? Something that became part of who you are? If this episode moved you, or surprised you, or made you think differently about your own family, that's exactly what this series is for. Subscribe so you don't miss our next country. And if you haven't seen Finland, South Korea, Brazil, or Nigeria yet, go watch them. Every episode is a window into a completely different answer to the same question. What does a child need most? I'm Mara. See you next time. Bye, friends.